we saved almost 50% of their annual budget just by finding those efficiencies. And actually, typically when you say, well, I'm going to save you money, that means you're going to lose some services. It was the inverse. It was greater services, better continuity, greater cyber defense posture, and save you money.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Tech Tea podcast with McLean Forrester. We are Heather and Larry McLean, and we are here to make technology more understandable and bring you the latest in emerging technology. Okay, so this week we're going to deep dive into a case study. It was a project we did over the past year, really exciting. It's about municipal IT governance and IT strategies, and we're going to just walk you through the whole thing and tell you how it all turned out. It's very interesting. But before we dig into that, as promised, we normally do a what's the tea? So this is the latest, something that's happening in the technology world right now. So Larry, what do you have for us? What's the tea today?
The tea today. Recently, ChatGPT unveiled another feature, which is wonderful. It's only within the paid version of ChatGPT, with the paid account. You can create your own teams, which is interesting. So you can create capabilities within ChatGPT and share it within your team. And you can create your own GPTs. So that's kind of a revolutionary thing. Very interesting. What do you think of that?
What does it mean to create your own GPT? Let's explain that maybe.
So, right, the basis of ChatGPT is a large language model utilizing AI, and it has this ability to now scour the internet and go find information. So the way ChatGPT was built over the last 20 years of just pure generic general internet knowledge, that's how it's built this massive capability to answer almost anything. But the struggle there is it doesn't know you, meaning it doesn't know your domain, your particular content. So if there's something you don't want to share with the internet, then I don't recommend you use just the normal ChatGPT, because whatever you feed up into it goes into the repository to continue to build the capability. So if you have proprietary information or sensitive information, whatever it is, you don't want to just share that with the entire internet. Being able to create your own utilizes the engine, but it also segments you out in your own little space where you can use that powerful engine, augment it with your own domain data, and now use the power of ChatGPT to create content, do research, etc., all kind of customized to you.
That's pretty cool. And I know we've been playing around with this a little bit, creating some of our own GPTs, training it up on McLean Forrester information. This has helped us write some articles. It helped us think through ideas, evaluate, some of our documentation. So, can you give me just a real world use case of how somebody could use this?
So just one generalist kind of example. If you wanted to respond to any kind of information, you want to tailor it to how your writing style is, you can go into ChatGPT, you create your own, you can go to Explore GPTs. That's in the upper right-hand corner, allows you to create your own. You name it, you describe it. Then you give it all your parameters, your prompt engineering here of what is it you want me to write, right? Because that's what ChatGPT is asking you. What do you want me to write? What kind of response do you want? And you constrain that exactly how you want it. So you can create that prompt for repeatability. You can reach out to the internet for current information. But the key is they don't share your information with the community. And you can even get so selectable where your information doesn't even get to further train the model, right? So again, if you're risk adverse, which many of us are, you don't want that information shared.
So you can upload documents, right? So that's how you kind of train it on what is specific to you. That's
Absolutely.
the part I like. Yeah.
Here's my style of writing. Here's the closure I want. Here's the header that I want. Here's exactly what I want it to look like. I want 3 paragraphs. I don't want bullet format. I want paragraph format. I want it to look exactly like this. You can get very, very detailed in the type of response you get.
Cool.
But of course, at the end of the day, like with any large language model or any kind of AI today, you need to have the expertise to understand what it wrote. And is it accurate? Are there hallucinations going on? Is it misinformation? You really want to still scrub everything that you put in there, even though it may customize it for you.
All right. Cool. That's awesome. If you want to know more about how we did that, just reach out on LinkedIn to us and or send a note to mcleanforester.com. We'd be happy to walk you through that. We just did this for one of our contacts the other day, and it was a lot of fun getting him set up. All right. So today, our case study. Excited. Again, this is all about municipal IT governance and strategy. And you might say, well, that's kind of out there. That's a little bit different. And it is. And this was a really fun project for us. Maybe, Larry, you could describe, what was it that we came in and did? Like, what was the original ask from this small city?
I'll set the stage a little bit first because typically we're out here and we're talking on this podcast about emerging technology. What's the latest and greatest? And this gets back to basics of let's assess what you're doing, how well are you doing it? Because the business side of the house, whether it's municipal government, whether it's commercial business, that operation is always looking for your IT, your data, any of your support functions to be highly effective and highly efficient. And unless you do some sort of self assessment and you have the skills to perform that self assessment, to stay with the latest technologies, to stay with the latest trends, you don't know if you're good at it or not. I mean, you may not be having any problems, but you may be utilizing 20-year-old technology that's really inhibiting your team. You just don't know it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what this project was all about. There was a small city had reached out and said, hey, we're looking for someone to perform an IT strategy / master plan for us, which I commend them because typically the scary part is if you're confident but unaware, right? They were not confident and they were aware that they had these limitations in this area. So you commend them to say, you know what, I'm not the smartest kid in the room on this. Let me bring in that smartest kid and get some answers that we need to make our future decisions on investments in IT and support for the staff.
Yeah. So what was the lay of the land? When I remember when we went, when we started the engagement, we started asking questions about, what's the staff look like? How big is everything? What are we looking at? And one of the first things I think I remember we learned was that they don't have any one IT expert sort of managing things. And I think this was maybe the root of their problem because they didn't really have an expert advising on IT. So that was the first thing we discovered, right? What else?
That's absolutely true. And again, there was that comfort in this is the way things have been for a very, very long time. So we're comfortable with it. So it must be okay. And as we dug in and found their business processes, because that's where you want to start, right? You want to start with the business process. Am I supporting the business function? And so their why were they doing this, was kind of key to this whole process, which was they needed a strategy. They knew they had investment decisions coming up, and they wanted to be in a good position to be able to confidently make those decisions, right? So it was a moment of self-reflection. How good are we? Am I spending money in the right places?
Mm-hmm.
Is the service that I'm getting even good service? Are the contracts that I let giving me the right services that I need, and how well are they doing it, right? And so at the end, they were looking for that decision support to ensure that those technology initiatives are fully aligned with their strategic objectives. So again, hats off to them. I can't say that enough times. They're good people.
Yeah, it was really good people. It was a fun project with working with a great team. So, what do you recall, like your initial first impressions? I mean, mine were they're managing a lot. I remember that they have a lot of utilities, a lot of systems that help manage those things, and it was a wonderful team doing their best to manage all these disparate things without a lot of expertise in the IT world. What were your first impressions?
That's exactly what mine were as well, because it came down to really, really good people without the training or experience to make decisions in a domain that they really knew very little about. So that was kind of scary for them. Uh, and as we dug into it, they were again great to work with. Here's our situation. Here's what we have. You tell us. And the important part for us was to establish and maintain that trust model
Mm-hmm.
because we needed to work on behalf of the city government. Didn't want to come in and try to upsell anything. We didn't want to do any of that because, again, your integrity is on the line. And if you come in as a partner to say, I'm here, trust me, I'm here on your behalf, you have to back that up.
Right. And we don't do, IT service provider type work. So it wasn't like we were trying to win this work out from under somebody else. We really work trusted advisors, as you mentioned. And that was a fun role to be in. Sure enjoyed it. Let's see. So
Let's start off with what we found, is which is
yeah,
what you've been really wanting to dig into. So on the business related aspect of our initial findings, I would say they had antiquated business processes, and they just weren't supported well by IT because they were using 20-year-old kind of concepts in IT. So that loss of growth and efficiencies due to the outdated technology support, they were still everyone's saving everything on their own personal drive, emailing everything around, delays in getting information because you weren't close to the internet or you weren't close to your email, and a lot of extra cost, and they had some aspects where they were having connectivity issues,
hmm
saturated bandwidth. Just it was kind of haphazard, right? And they had a third party service provider, which we've encountered. I mean, I'll ask you, when we've gone to a couple of the conferences, when we asked someone, how good is your IT? And their answer was, I have IT support.
right. And I think the thing is, most people trust that third party, right? As they should. But what we found out is that third party IT support is not always doing things in the organization's best interest. They're there to support the customer with whatever the contract says. And what we found out after digging through all the contracts that the organization had is, was there was really no one holding them accountable, holding that third party accountable to deliver what was in the contracts. And there was really no one in the organization that could interpret some of the data coming back from that third party. So, for example, they would send information about patches that needed to happen to servers, things that were outdated, and the organizational people didn't really quite know what to do with that information. And the third party didn't really take a next step. They didn't follow through, right? They weren't invested in that customer's organization, whereas that's definitely something that we take to heart, and we were invested, as we did that work.
Well, and on top of that, it isn't like your third party is necessarily nefarious, right?
Right.
And whether that's a third party or your own staff, any good practice, ITIL will tell you this. Any of the best practices out there will say, always, always just review what you're doing. Do a self assessment. That whole continuous improvement cycle is something you want to be doing. So if your organization, whether it's contracted out or internal, isn't constantly doing that, some things are probably missing because the IT continues to evolve.
Right. I mean, a good example of that is, their cyber risk. They really didn't have a good understanding of what risk they had. They weren't really getting that information out of their IT support contractor because they don't have the full picture of everything. And so I felt really good about being able to come in and do a full assessment of all of their risks, including cyber, and help put some mitigation steps in place, help them put a plan of action in place to lower that risk for them. I feel super good about doing that. That was, I think they appreciated that as well because they didn't even know what they didn't know.
And on top of that, as we've interviewed and talked to other municipal government leaders, quite often the answer is there's been risk transfer. One of the ways to mitigate risk, there's been risk transfer. I have insurance. Well, sure, you're insured for monetary damages, but what about the reputation of the city? What about the reputation of the constituents in the city looking to their senior leaders, their civic leaders to be able to protect their information and the continuity of operations? You get hacked and you're shut down and held for ransom with ransomware. That's not a good situation. And your answer shouldn't only be, well, I know we didn't check anything, we never did any really cyber defense, but I have insurance. It's
Right.
like, well,
Well,
okay.
and what we found out from talking to a lot of city government folks that they don't always get the insurance because it's very expensive. And so they take the risk, maybe without understanding fully the risk that they're taking on, but they just can't afford it. And so at least if you know what the risk is out there, you can make informed decisions about those things.
And a lot of the actions that are really the basics to tightening up your cyber defense posture, is really just regular patching and making sure your vulnerabilities are mitigated. There's just a lot of basic steps that you can take that's going to eliminate a lot of that risk.
Right. Right. So did we maybe you can share some of the efficiencies we did find for them? We actually had quite a win here for the city.
Yeah, we did. We did. It was good. One of the big ones was there wasn't a really good disaster recovery plan. So when you think of continuity of operations, meaning can I continue to operate? Which in this particular case, the city ended up with a problem in their facility. It was almost, I felt like Nostradamus. But it was, what if you can't use this facility anymore? And the answer at that time was, well, no, we don't see that happening. But it did happen, and they had to move. And a lot of the things that we put in the strategy and master plan covered exactly what you need to do to mitigate a situation where, hey, how do I have continuity of operations if something happens here?
Yeah. So to summarize, what we delivered to them in that IT strategy and master plan, right? It was an overall risk assessment. It was an action plan for kind of getting healthy in all the different aspects, right? It was modernization plan, right? They needed to get on Office 365 to kind of upgrade all those capabilities. The disaster recovery piece, we covered down on continuity of operations. What else?
Reduction in their footprint, because they were using a lot
Right.
of legacy capabilities. They had servers that they didn't really need anymore that they were having to sustain, and again providing additional
Yeah.
risk, your risk profile. But honestly, even the contracts, tightening up the contracts and making sure that they were very specific and you weren't overpaying for things. And we found great efficiencies there, where there was probably an antiquated model for delivery of services. And we found, utilizing technology that's available today, many ways to save a lot of those dollars. We saved almost 50% of their annual budget just by finding those
Right.
efficiencies. And actually, typically, when you say, well, I'm going to save you money, that means you're going to lose some services. It was the inverse. It was greater services, better
Right.
continuity, greater cyber defense posture, and save you money. So that was a win-win totally.
Right. Right. And then I think the other big win out of that was our number one recommendation was for them to hire an IT manager, right? They needed an expert. It was time. They needed an expert on board who could provide that day-to-day guidance, follow through with the plan that we had put together. That was important because, what was the point of the plan if nobody's there to follow through with it? So the cool thing I like, we actually got to go brief city council. You briefed their city council, Larry, and gave them a full overview of everything that we did, and looked for, actually help them make the decision to hire that IT manager. What was that like?
That was great because honestly, and I had to apologize, if you remember, I had to apologize in the session because I said, before you were blissfully ignorant. Now we've unveiled all of the issues that you didn't know about before. You pull back the curtain and it's terrible, or it's not good at least, and you're at significant risk. Now you've been briefed on the risk. So now you really kind of have to do something about it. And that's not a negative, that's really a positive, because every good civic leader wants to do right by their citizens. And so that's how they took it as well. And they said, yeah, we agree with you. And we were able to buy down the cost of adding another person on their payroll because we found all of these great offsets in the budget to save them money. So again, it was kind of a win-win in that aspect too.
Yeah, sure was. And then you even got to help with some of the interviewing for the new IT manager, which was great. So you became such a trusted advisor that they wanted you involved in that. And we're still working with them today. We're basically their reach back consultants if they need any help in the future.
That maintaining that trust model and the integrity piece was immensely important to us.
Yeah, it was fun. Anything else we want to hit on that?
Let's see, what else did we have in our notes? I'll read the notes.
Well, why? I know we hit on some of the value of doing this, but let's be a little more pointed on why this is so important for an organization to have a strategy and a plan in place.
That's really good because it's a struggle quite often in support functions like IT or anything else to justify expenses.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes back to, if you haven't tied the investment in IT or anything else to what's my business outcome, then you're not doing it very well. You're not telling the story very well. And for us, we knew the pain that the people on staff were going through on a daily basis because of the limitations of their technology and the extra costs and things like that. So at the end of the day, it was incredibly important for us to make their business operation far more streamlined, take the pain away out of their situation. So it's very hard to quantify that, right? You can qualify it, but it's hard to quantify of how much less effort does someone have to do in their job on a day-to-day basis? How much pain can I take away?
Yeah,
You
I
know,
mean, a good
go ahead.
example is that where they would say if somebody was streaming music and they needed to send an email, they couldn't. They ran out of bandwidth, and so they'd have to go walk to the other person's
Door
desk
to
and say,
door.
"Can you stop streaming so I can do my job here?" And like that's just ridiculous, right? In today's world, there should be no reason for that, but this is just the reality they were living with, and so it was, or they were driving backups to the bank, to put in the bank overnight because they didn't have a different process. Things like that, which I know, had to have made their life really difficult. It was really awesome to be able to shore that up for them and get them on a good path.
Well, even on their contracts and their purchases and things like that.
Right.
I mean, and I see this not as this particular event that we had with the one city. It really comes back to I totally believe this is very evident in some form or fashion in many municipal
Right.
areas, right? Because they just don't have the money nor the support, especially if you're a rural town or city. Where's this great set of ideas that's constantly streaming in? Who's paying attention to it? Is it the city clerk? No. Is it the finance person? No.
Right.
That's not their job. They were hired for a specific thing where they need an IT person, but they also need an IT person who has an eye to what's the next thing that's going to benefit my
Right.
customer.
Well, we would love to do more of this work, I know, and it was a lot of fun. Maybe, Larry, just give a quick rundown of your background in this area because I really felt like for a reasonable price, we were able to give them some real experts in this area. So, just a quick rundown, maybe, of what you bring to the table
Sure.
here.
I mean, it wasn't just me, it
Right.
was,
We had a team.
it was a strong team. And honestly, when you have a depth of experience and a breadth of experience, you've seen a lot of things. It makes it easier because it's less research. You can do it more efficiently. I've
Right.
seen this before. I've done this before. I've run two global networks for the Department of Defense, once for Defense Intelligence Agency, and then another opportunity I had was half of the U.S. Air Force network services, network operations. So those two pieces. So I'm an ITIL expert. So it's not about can I do the job, but am I doing it right with best practices? Right? So you blend those together. I ran an enterprise data management office. I'm also a certified data management professional. So again, practice and education, you put those together.
Right. And you've developed several strategies and plans over the years for, multiple organizations.
I won't even say well, I guess I can say my first one was probably 1996.
So you've got experience, is what I'm
Yeah,
hearing.
yeah,
Which is great. So like we could come in with that expert sort of experience and opinion and really apply that in a place where it was really needed and really appreciated. And like that's why I say we love doing this kind of work because it warms our heart to be able to help these groups out. So if you're interested in talking more about that, I would say please reach out to us. You can get us on LinkedIn, info@mcleanforrester.com. We've got a couple of articles out on our website about this. And so we'd just love to do more of this work for great people, out there.
understand what you have, understand what it could be.
Yep. Okay.
Awesome.
Well, that was fun. We should do this again, maybe with a different project. We'll do that in the future. I really enjoyed talking through that. I hope you all enjoyed listening and following along. Again, if you want to get a hold of us, we'd be happy to chat. No obligation. Check out our website and we'll talk soon.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Take care. Take care.